welcome back to the video. So, I'm going to be showing within Forestcraft, which is going to be the Rhinoceroach archetype. Now, for those of you who do not know, I've actually been playing Shadowverse Evolve since the first JP set, and this was actually my basic go-to option to get into the game when it came out. The funny part is that my deck looks completely different back then compared to now. But after doing some testing and also getting third place at a local a few weeks ago, I got some nice good information to get like a main gist of a deck analysis to show you off the deck that I usually like to play within tournaments and even just regular casually. So what I'm going to show you all is I'm going to go in a bit of an out of order sense and go for like the main priority cards and then going over the rest of the deck has to offer, and you can go check it out down in the description for the completely full deck. Now, to start off, we are going to showcase the main card that is utilized, which is Rhinoceroach. This has an Evolve 0, Evolve as follower, basically a free evolve, has Rush, but the most important part that it has here, it's its fanfare skill. Give this follower plus X in attack. X equals number of cards you played during this turn, excluding the card. This card is pretty solid overall, just because of how much potential reach you can do, and it's more so a late game use card. So if you have a lot of play points and spend a lot of stuff within, such as spells or followers that you play onto the field, you can help gain that main stat on this as well. I'll show you all some methods too that is important when it comes to utilizing Rhinoceroach to its best ability, and it also has on its evolved form. On evolve, you have either one of the effects. Either you can give this follower storm, or you can select the enemy on the field and deal it X damage, where X is equal to the follower's attack, which you'll gain off of the regular Rhinoceroach skill. The great thing about this is that you have nice flexibility if you just want to go deal with a specific follower, but you don't want to go proc storm immediately. That's another good use, but a lot of people like to use the storm effect mostly, so then that they can reach good numbers or just get like a very noticeable big field. So with that being said too, we're also wondering how are we going to get to this thorough end, because as a spoiler alert, we are playing basically half our deck as cost 1. So what's good to use? And a good start of that is to talk about our draw engines. Now, we're going to start off with these 1 cost Harvest Festival. Now, Harvest Festival is a very important amulet because, as it says over here in the text, when this card leaves play, you can draw a card. That is really important for helping draw a good amount of your pieces in, and can also be backed up with some of your bounce pieces. And these bounce pieces include Ancient Elf and also Nature's Guidance. Now, to start off with Nature's Guidance, this basically is select the card in the field, return to your owner's hand, and draw a card. If you basically I have like Harvest Festival on the field, just pay 1 over here, bounce this, and you basically draw 2 cards. So you kind of get like 3 cards back into your hands, but 2 new cards that come out of the skill. And then you have Ancient Elf, which I'll throw the evolution form here as well. This one has Ward, also has evolution point with 1, and as I talked about in my most recent video on Rikka's theory crafting about utilizing your your evolution point economy, this can be basically used from your EP or just from regular play point. So what basically this does is that on fair, you can return another card to the field into the owner's hand and give it +1/+1. So this can scale up to 3/3, and then when you evolve it for E1, you can do basically the exact same thing, which can get you to a max stat of 5/5. Now, this is really good just because, first off, it has word, which is a good use, and you can scale the word up to 5/5. And if you play Harvest Festival multiple times, or you have like say 1 carried over, and then you can just play like an evolution point, and you just only cost 2 for this, and you basically can get 2 cards off of Harvest Festival. So it's nice use of thorough draw engine. Another thing I want to go stress too is that my deck is unfortunately not playing Bellringer Angel, which I have over here, which is another good use of draw piece. But the reason why I'm not playing it within the deck, despite it being a heavy cost 1 deck, is that I think that the warding is still fine overall, even if you have thorough weakness. We are playing against some areas in the meta where we have stuff like Storm or such, but I don't think it's as big of a deal. And the last word's 2 draw cards. Sometimes they don't even want to deal with this, and they just find ways to kill it off. I really think that you can get more capitalization off of this main draw engine with Festival, Elf, and Nature's Guidance. So I think really it is a necessity to play Bellringer Angel as quickly overall, but you could tech in Bellringer Angel. That is one potential idea. But the overall consensus, though, is that I think as long as you have this main thorough draw engine, you should be fine. Now, I'm going to be going now over the main costs within the deck. As I said before, that we are playing heavy cost ones in this, and the main reason why I decided to do that for my own deck, only because I think that the best way to capitalize on Rhinoceroach is to have very low cost plays when you have it into your late game, and we'll go more in that when we get into like theory crafting side. But we'll start off here with 3 copies of Elfchild May. This card is really good because on play you can select an enemy follower in the field and deal 1 damage, and then when you bounce it, similar to what I talked about the bounce engines of Nature's Guidance and Ancient Elf, you can ping 1 as well. So it's like the same exact thing. You can place it once on place, hit the card, and then bounce it again to ping out another. I think this is a good use card. I think that this is thoroughly doable. I don't think it's like as a heavy priority, but if there's also even some low cost stuff that you want to go potentially ping, say you have like 2 defense against you, and you have like a bounce engine, you could plop this and then bounce this card, and then be able to take control of that card. Good example is Bellringer, which I just also showed you earlier. Next, I play 3 Goblin. This is more so a tech choice. The reason why I like Goblin 2, it's for 2 reasons. One, it's an easy use of play, albeit from my Rhinoceroach. This can also be use bounced, and sometimes you don't need, you could just like swing 1 already if you have 1 in the field, then bounce it, and then play it down again. Some people like to do, they play on the card, bounce the card, and then play it again, despite having Summoning Sickness. So this is a use, but I think that the best reason why I like utilizing this card is because of bait. A lot of the meta currently is utilizing a lot of control and quick usage and spell usage too as well. So if you play this one early and then they thoroughly answer it, it's a good use of bait. So I think that that's pretty helpful in that regard. The next thing I have over here is 3 Water Fairies. This is thoroughly important because I like to utilize this in the early game because Water Fairy has a evolution. If I can go find it over here, its main evolution on E2, not E1. So that is that on evolve you can summon the fairy token, and then both of it has last word, put a fairy token into EX area. So it is nice to help get some of that fairies already board presence used, and you can even use it to immediately attack with, which is quite nice. For the cost ones too, I also play Angelic Snipe. This one I kind of did back and forth if I wanted to play 2 or 3, but I think I like taking it at 2 at the moment. I don't think we utilize a lot of quicks, we utilize more tech in my deck, but I think that Angelic Snipe is a good use of answer card, but we also have a nice answer card that we'll be showing in a bit. And then finally the last card here before I show you the first half of the deck with Fairy Circle. Now, Fairy Circle, this one is pretty simple, which is put 3 fairy tokens into each area. We'll definitely talk more of that when we get into economy usage and such, but I think that is a rather very good use of your slots, just because you can get that main resource game in the EX. Now, we're going to go on to the next higher cost. These ones over here are more for specific plays that you can use, but these are some like areas that I enjoy utilizing. So this includes stuff like Sylvan Justice at 2. This one is select an enemy follower on the field, deal 3 damage, and put a fairy token to EX area. Similar concept to how Water Fairy is used. You can put a fairy in the EX area on last words. This one is a good use of answer, and coming up for a specific card in general will be important for how having fairy token in the EX area is great. The next card we have over here is Rose Gardener. Rose Gardener, as you see, as his E1 evolve this follower, and we have the Rose Gardener here on evolve. You can enemy follower on the field and return it to the owner's hand and combo 3 draw a card. Now, I do want to also stress that we get a better version coming soon called Inishi Flash from the Uma Musume set. That one you just need to use feed 1. You'll get some 1/1 stat gain. But this one over here is pretty good within the combo 3, and I think that utilizing it to your benefit is good. Now, I put this at 2. I could put this at 3, because I could change like Elf out, because I have Elf at 3, so I capitalize as much as possible. But I like having Rose Gardener just at 2, because not many times I have to force bounce people, and I usually mostly use this to take out a lot of evolved units. Like, an example would be like, say they have their own Rhinoceroach, right? And they have this. I like to immediately evolve into the Rose Gardener. This out. This goes back into their evolve deck face up, and then this goes back into their hand. So it's not a thinking process to kind of deny. Sometimes though it could backfire, only because there are sometimes some on plays like Merlin's, good example, that could have a nice fanfare ability on base skill, but it just depends on how you want to that or force out. It could also just basically deny summoning sickness, which is the main cause of use of Rose Gardener. The next card I want to stress off too is one of my honest MVPs. This really helped me win or get to top 3 in my locals, which is Okami. Okami is in the trial deck, but only at 2, but I got one off the booster. And this one is when another follower is put onto your field, give this follower +1/+1. I like this sync with Okami mixed with Rhinoceroach, because Rhinoceroach helps get the reach that you want within Storm, but Okami is your main thorough seller. I'll go more over that on the theory side, but I think that Okami is just really solid. The only problem it has, if it has answers to stuff like execution, where you can just, this shouldn't just be thoroughly answered, or in Draftcraft you have Fafnir, and this can, if does not have enough, then this can just be killed off. That's why I always recommend having like Okami and then scale immediately. I don't recommend just as a hard 4 unless you really need to. Then we the last 2 cards coming it. We have Fairy Beast. Going back to what we talked about with Sylvan Justice, this card is very important. You can basically just banish a card in the EX area and give your leader +3 and draw a card. So you don't do as much healing within this game. More so the healing will be coming from stuff like Marvelous Sunday coming up within Uma Musume, but I think that it's really important to have Fairy Beast. I think it's just still a bigger cost overall that's used, so I don't really see it as heavy priority to put into play sets. I would prioritize Okami over that, but Fairy Beast is a nice emergency option when you need to either draw a card and or heal up to 3. The last card I want to go showcase here is Aria Fairy Princess. This is the main card within the trial deck. It has Ward, of course, which is very important use, because basically we have Elf and Aria as our only wards. But on Fanfare, you can put up to 9 fairy tokens area from the field or into the EX area. And while this card is on the field, your Pixie followers gain Rush. Now, some people have been saying that this syncs really well with Titania's Sanctuary, because it gets both Rush and Assail. That's more so used in the Fairies variant, but for my variant specifically, this is quite important just because of the main resource gain that you get. You can put up to 9 followers, and if you have thoroughly an empty EX area, that's really important to help proc skills like Fairy Beast, bring up Okami if you want to go bring up some fairies to go increase, because it can just come into play. And of course Rhinoceroach, because Rhinoceroach is going to help gain the extra stat line. But there's something that on Twitter was said, is that Rhinoceroach does not count within Aria summons, because those are more summoned, not played cards. This is why I recommend more so with Rhinoceroach and Aria to not do it on the same turn. I like playing Aria first a previous turn and then playing Rhinoceroach on the turn afterwards, so that you can capitalize on your use of fairies if you want to pull the trigger. Other than that, that is basically my deck use. I also play 1 goblin on the evolution deck, or the evolve deck. So this is more so for the emergency and another use of reach as one example. But that's pretty much what I have in terms of thorough deck. Now I do want to go stress also some alternatives that you could build your Rhinoceroach deck differently because a lot of this is used based on tech, what I personally like, but again, your mileage may vary. As this is a combo deck, you can have like nice flexible pieces. You just don't have the third consistency, but you can kind of counter that consistency with notable engines. Some example cards that people like to go play within the Rhinoceroach variant is Erd, for example. Erd is a nice use to kind of shut down certain cards, especially those to make them play out again for summoning sickness. And of course, on evolve, you can, if you want to go immediately evolve it, you can, because it's only a cheap E1. You can select the card into the EX area and banish it, so you can force out cards to not have them get back. That's also really important, coming stuff from like, if you have recursion, that's going to be important for like Uma Musume in the future with Agnes Tachion, but you have basically this as a potential I need to push your cards back option. Another thing that a lot of people like overall, but I don't prefer it in my own Rhinoceroach deck, is Archer. Archer is really good. I actually played around with this within the Fairies mid-range variants, but for me, I think the main thing I want to focus on is get more of that main consistency focus, and that's why I don't really tech in Archer. I could throw in Archer to go replace some of the other cards, but I don't like what I have within the 20 costume variants. But I think that Archer is a thoroughly very good card overall. So you could go try to throw it in your decks if you so desire. Another card too, going up to back to the cost ones. If you don't like Angelic Snipe, if it's just like a deal damage to a follower, you can also play Angelic Barrage, which can help deal with kind of like also the mirror match if you have like non-scaled fairies. But Angelic Barrage is also really good in terms of having small pings, and then you can counter with Elfchild May, for example. Now, one more thing I do want to mention about tips about building in this deck is that I like just utilizing 21 costs, but I don't highly recommend it. I just like trying to have as much consistency as possible, and that's why I like trying to help benefit my skills within Rhinoceroach by using a lot of thorough cost ones to go play in the late game. I recommend usually for myself around 16 to 18 for that, and I can flex some pieces like Archer or such, but your mileage may vary. But I think the main thing too is like a lot of people take out Goblin and they can plop in their card. That's completely fine. I would like to stress though is to keep in mind about the deck limits too. I like staying at a 3-card deck, and that's what my deck is, basically 40 and of course the 10 in Evolve. But especially for more so the Evolve deck, make sure you have the thorough room. I've seen a list, I've even tried it out one time where it was 17 cost one deck where it was 3 Archer. I could go down to 2 Archer realistically and like 1 more Goblin, but then I have like 1 Archer in my Evolve deck, so that's another use of example. Then just some other cards that can be potentially used for tech. You have Noble Fairy, which is really nice. I like using this on the Fairies variant, but this is also as important for utilizing its combo 3 to basically destroy the enemy follower, and also as ward. So if you're more scared of being hit a lot more in the Storm variants around the meta, you could utilize Noble Fairy. It's very good in terms of that, but you do give your opponent a fairy token. So unless you're really close to death, then it doesn't really as much matter. You could probably play around that. Another thing too is Woodkin Curse. This basically shuts down any damage that is swung on. Another example too to play into more so game is Path to Purgatory. This one, this is really good in terms of having the 6 or less clause. A lot of Forestcraft decks I've noticed at the beginning of the first few weeks was utilizing PTP only because it's a nice draw 3. But then I think that this is not as recommended overall, just because you already have the draw engine of Festival, Guidance, and Elf. But could try out PTP because that will help thorough board clear, as Forest does not have as much super hard board clear compared to some of the other classes out there. But it's a nice last use. And the last card I want to give as potential alternatives within deck building is Silverbolt. Silverbolt's a really good card. I think that it will shine more in the future sets, but this one is a quick 7 cost, which is kind of thoroughly expensive, but Basically, you can select an enemy leader or enemy follower. You can draw a card, deal X damage to the selected enemy, as X equals the number of cards in your hand. This is thoroughly important for if you already have like close to the hand limit, which is around 7, and if you thoroughly don't want to overdraw too. If you're at 7, you can play this card and still get back to 7 with this. So you can spend a lot of your good points here. There's not as much regain play point variance right now for helping with bolt, but they will get some soon. And these are some alternatives you can consider too. There's a lot of other cards you consider in the Forestcraft pool, but that's the overall main alternate recommendations that you want to play if you want to go tweak some of your list. Next thing I do want to do now is give a example of what you should do in Mulligan and how to capitalize best for the cards within Rhinoceroach. So what I'm going to do like a very quick shuffle here and show you all what a potential opening Mulligan could afford here. And some of the main like thinking process too. I'll probably do a video for Rikka's theory crafting about the concept of Mulligan, depending on if anyone wants to definitely see it. Feel free to leave a comment if you do. Now, looking at this too, if we look at this top 4 cards here in the deck, let's for the sake of argument, let's just assume that we're going second because I like going second within this deck. Noticing here, you do get Fairy Circle and Water Fairy, and you also get Ancient Elf, which is really nice. Aria is more so a laking option, but if we kind of see like the later progress of the deck, you can draw Aria later on, but say like we don't have as much good pieces, like we keep getting Okami or Fairy Beast and such. That's more so that when we want to generate a resource pool, we could use Aria, and for Fairy Circle, you can just play it right away and kind of spend the fairies immediately. Draw like Sylvan Justice or such, it should be fine. So that's like one example of what you can do for Mulligan, but say we have like going first. There are concepts where going first, you have to keep in mind of a lot of these E1 proc skills, or even E2 if you're in like Water Fairy, for example. So that's why I like going second, because I like having an alternate cost use rather than using my own play points. I just have like an abundance of play points. So like this is E1, so I would rather want to go spend it on a play on an evolution point cost. That's why I like going second. The only downside about this is that they play their pieces first and they can just switch immediately. Stuff like Quick Blader, stuff like Ninja Trainee, and like Swordcraft, or really any other card, they can swing immediately too. But I think that this is more capitalization on the more resource game, which is my next point. Next point too, that I want to give a tip on is capitalization of early game, and that's why I think that you should definitely try to get like 2 to 3, I would say, or at least try to get some of the main draw pieces that you want to be used. I would say these are good priority cards. Let me grab this. These are like nice cards, for example, like any 3 cost, any of the draw engine. I would recommend, if you see Harvest Festival, I would recommend thoroughly keeping it, as long as you have a nice bounce engine to pair up with this, so with like an Ancient Elf and Nature's Guidance, or try to bank on that too. All else fails, you can also do Harvest Festival skill, which I didn't explain, which you can pay 1, rest the card, and put it into Terry to give +1, so you do heal 1, but then you'll still proc draw, lead play draw card thing though. This is more the case if you draw multiple Harvest Festivals, but I recommend like keeping around the handle like 2 to 3 ones. Naturally, Nature's Guidance is going to be one of these, and also anything that has like generators for later turns, like Fairy Circle and such, those will be pretty much fine too as well. So that's kind of like how I would play the Mulligan overall. And the last thing I want to capitalize is also main late game options. So good examples of this is Aria, Fairy Princess, and Okami, and also Rhinoceroach itself. Now, this is really important because this depends on how your EX area is thoroughly laid out. As I go over here to go grab my fairy tokens, for example, we already had like 5 fairies from like earlier plays. I would say like maybe like a Sylvan Justice and a Water Fairy was propped, and then like Fairy Circle, for example. Now, say we're on turn 8. And you would play like Okami down. So Okami already will have 5/5, but you can also say like you have an empty board here. You can spend the rest of your play points to move all these up, and this will be now 9/9 stat line. So the only problem though is that you have to wait a turn to utilize it. But as long as you scale pretty well, you can help utilize Okami to your best benefit. Next card talking about this is Aria. Aria is just basically helping you gain resources. Say you literally have like no cards in the field, maybe even no Aria, and you play like Aria. I would recommend playing it around like turn 6 or 7, and then you can help spam your fairies. I always recommend trying to go Kiba's fairies because this could be also answer gate. The only issue that you could have potentially is crowding, which I've seen a lot of players do. Then you can have something like this, and then you could just like ward Aria, make them force to take this down, or have like another card that can just deal with this entire field, which I've seen. It's more so to help a lot of your gain on your area and such. And the last card here too, and the final main thing is that, of course, we're talking about Rhinoceroach, and we have Rhinoceroach here. Now, I always like telling people that the best way to capitalize on Rhinoceroach, keep in mind how many you play. Like, for example, you play for this, and then say you have some other spells, like you could play Fairy Circle again, or you can play like an Angelic Snipe on your turn. If I can go find it really quickly. There we go. So this would cost overall 6, and then you still have like, I'd say 2 more play points remaining. So then you can play Rhinoceroach, and the count will be 6 cards played during this turn. So because we already played 2 spells and brought up 4 fairies, so you'll scale the stat line to 7/1. And then evolve is 0, you can basically free evolve and then gain the storm, and say your opponent is at I don't know, like health 6 or 7, which is basically enough to go hit this because it's a 7/1. You can switch storm for game if they don't have a response, then that is still pretty good and can just go for main lethal. I don't necessarily have this as a potential relying option though, by the way. I still think the best ways to try to capitalize on your state would be stuff like Okami, but if you have that small reach, you could just capitalize well off of Rhinoceroach. The only problem I will also say within the Rhinoceroach evolution is that it does have a very weak defense stat line, but it's more so an offensive card. So if this gets thoroughly sniped, then unfortunately it is what it is, and it just really happens like that. So other than that, that's been pretty much the main deck analysis for Rhinoceroach. It's a pretty overall fun deck for myself. I really like the main thing. You have to go through this. Despite a lot of the meta being thoroughly controlled, it's still a nice, pretty eased way to play combo within this combo variant within this meta. I would say definitely the pros of this deck would be having a powerful push, and then also a lot of good use of resource utility, whether it comes from draws, whether it comes from Aria or Fairy Circle to generate some fairies in the X area. But some main cons, I will say that it does have a potential chance to brick, and that's why I always recommend just going on 40, just because if you go more higher within the main 40-50 range, you might not be able to get specific pieces that you want to capitalize, and especially if you want either Rhinoceroach or Okami, then those cards are going to be a bit harder unless you like probably in luck because of odds and such. And then the last con I do want to go stress to finish up this video is that you can get out-controlled within this variant. That's mostly notable because you have stuff like Dragon, you have stuff like Havencraft counter within Quick, and also main enemies. And you also have Swordcraft with not just with a very good example of how it could thoroughly beat Forestcraft in 2 ways, or at least this Rhinoceroach build. You can base it by basically warding, which can be used by Sea Queen Otohime, which puts up a lot of wards, or the main storm usage where you can just get outrun, and for me, I don't play a lot of wards in my side, so you just get completely ran over. So those are some thorough examples of why it's kind of not as well at the moment, but it is a thorough, solid deck. I've seen it get a lot of good thorough tops, but consistency is a bit of a tricky problem. But overall, I just really like enjoying the deck, and hopefully you all enjoy playing Rhinoceroach yourself. Other than that, that's been it for today's video. Thank you all for joining in. Continue to embrace the darkness, and we will see you all in the next video.